Welcome back to another episode of the Near Future Podcast. I'm your host, Duque, and I have Nicolai here with me again. We'll be talking about collaboration. We'll be talking about how to collaborate better with your team as a newly fully remote employee. I think that's been one of my biggest challenges since I moved, and obviously collaborating with teams that are international, like you, Nicolai. It's been probably a challenging experience as well. So we'll be getting into all the details and some of the examples that we think are important to consider when you are working remote. How are you doing today, Nikolai?
Doing pretty good. It's a little early in the morning, but otherwise things are pretty fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, I know this is going to be a really great conversation with your perspective as a fully remote employee. And then I'm trying to grow and lead a team and trying to bring people back to the office type of situation. So I think it's gonna be a really good discussion on collaboration for sure.
yeah, and I like this discussion here between you and I because I am obviously fully remote. I'm not a manager. I'm not like managing anyone. But you, on the other hand, are working at the office and you manage people and you have to be like present for that. So I think it's great to get both perspectives as well. And obviously, I think we have done some episodes on like the benefits and drawbacks of working remote versus in person. And I'm sure we'll kind of continue talking about this because it's on my mind and I think uh, there's value in that as well. So let's just start with the first kind of point over here, which is just participating in a community where half the team or some of the team is remote. How do you see that going kind of in a 10,000 point of view? Like how does that look like in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all understand that remote and hybrid is kind of the way to go right now and for the foreseeable future. So we're still learning. I mean, I know I'm still trying to figure out the best way to communicate. I have team members who are fully remote that are in other states. Currently working on a project with a gentleman who's actually in another country, and some of the challenges that come with that, uh, time zone differences, and all of those things. Uh, I have to really improve my written communication because a lot of the times he's 12-hour difference. So, I can't always get a phone call with him at the end of the day. 9, 10 p.m. when he's starting his day. So I really have to be very clear on my emails and written form there. So that's just been something I've been improving. But I think um, I think there are just challenges to make sure you don't forget about people as well. Like you you may be in person, or I might be working in the office 4 days a week, and I just need to be very aware of where people are, what they're doing. I can just pick up the phone and call them, if I have a question. But it's just the awareness that I need to have, and remembering where everybody is or what they're doing. Like, that's just a little bit more of a challenge for me with this, work and the team being so spread out.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the same, hopefully the same mindset that the person on the other side had. Like they are getting the benefit of working remote, they're getting the benefit of maybe not being at the office all the time and being a little more flexible. But with that comes that responsibility of communicating better, make sure the calendar is up to date. That's like the first point of communication um, with the team overall. Just make sure you're available, make sure you have your chat open, make sure you're clear on the calendar. I think that's where you start seeing a lot of conflicts in these situations when we're not clear about the expectations, you're not clear about when you're available, what are you doing, and presenting results, make sure you're meeting with people. I feel like I spent a lot more times in meetings now that I'm remote because again the conversation just popping in someone's office is not as easy. I use a lot of the chat obviously, but having those meetings, having my camera on every time I have a meeting, I think it's also very very important.
Yeah, and one other note on that, you're saying you spend a lot of time in meetings. I think one thing to make it easier for these teams that are spread out is just use those tools that are available to you, like your Outlook calendar. Keep it up to date, because if I need to have a conversation with you and I see that, let's say we're using Teams or Outlook, and I see that your little button is red, I want to be able to say, okay, when can I meet with Luis today? Can I meet with him at 1 o'clock? So I open up my calendar. I'll open yours just to instead of have to go back and forth with emails and chatting and like when can we meet? I'll just look at that and propose a time. But if your calendar is not up to date, even with personal stuff, I understand that some people who work from home, they will fit in a doctor appointment here and there. I'm all for that. I get it. But it's just throw a block of, time on that calendar to say that you're unavailable just so it will reduce the difficulties for me to get a hold of you. Or, Teams has kind of you can set it a message. It doesn't even have to be away. It could, like last week, I had meetings all day on Wednesday. I put on my little status message. I'm in project meetings all day. I will be a little slow to respond, just so people kind of had an expectation of um, how to get a hold of me that day. So I would say just use those tools, because when you are collaborating or are trying to just find a time to collaborate, make it easy for somebody to be able to even get a hold of you. I would say that's good step one.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well. We use Google for our office, and so if you said that you're out of office or you have a block during the day that you're out of office, if you're gonna chat someone, it says this person's out of office until this time. If you're gonna send them an email, it says this person's out of office until this time. So I think that's a great feature, and I use it all the time just to again signal that I'm not doing something else. I'm not sitting at my desk. People cannot physically see me at my desk, but if they see on the calendar that I'm off, they're going to be more likely to maybe send me a chat later or understand that I'm not available at that time. So definitely using the tools. And I think the most important part there is actually using the tools. So if you have a calendar and you never update it, it's basically worthless. What kind of tools did you use for work or for personal to like collaborate with others?
Well, again, I've been doing this for 15 years, and so a lot of these collaboration tools that we have today didn't even exist when I started. Like Trello and Asana. I know that you are big on some of these tools. Notion is another one. Teams didn't really exist that then. So there was just so many things that you just had to do it in person. And so I find myself trying to gravitate towards that older way of doing things. And I want to be able to open up Teams. I want to be able to see you. So using that camera, just like you said, that's a really big deal. But then, opening up my PDF and sharing my screen, and walking around and just trying to point, I'll find myself pointing like at my screen, and I'm like, oh shoot, they can't see what I'm pointing at. So just trying to make sure I go on there. But having a Bluebeam, I love Bluebeam. Adobe, just don't feel like it's as good for the collaboration. But if I'm struggling to explain something to somebody, maybe a road design or a conflict with their utilities or whatever it is, if I'm in Bluebeam and I can be pointing to the mouse and zooming in and zooming out, but also I'll just start drawing on there. They have some nice drawing tools. And if somebody is explaining something, I'll just do like, a quick ugly barrier with a cross slope and just like, hey, is this what you mean? And they're like, no, no, actually that's not. And so just trying to make it as if we were in person, as if we could just pick up a pen and paper and start drawing on it. Bluebeam, honestly, sharing my screen using Bluebeam has been 95% of my collaboration efforts and the tools that I use.
Yeah,
But I know you also are big into the technology side of things. So what about you?
Bluebeam is great. We use it for a lot in our office. I've tried a little bit of using like my iPad if I need to like sketch something quick, because with Zoom specifically, you can share your iPad screen like really easily. Like it's just basically like mirroring your screen. So I've tried that a little bit when I really like, oh, let me just show a quick sketch. But Bluebeam is where we use what we use all day every day pretty much for PDFs, for sketching, for collaboration, everything. That's where we mark up drawings in like the studio sessions and collaborate and everything. So yeah, Bluebeam is definitely one of the big ones. Google Chat has been a tool that has been improving a lot since the pandemic started. And not only that, but they have some really good features for like team collaboration. They have what they call spaces where you can have documents, you can have tasks assigned to teams in or people in that same space. You can have a chat feature between the teams, so it's nice because everything gonna get stored. And if your team changes, you can invite more people and they can see the whole history of like the project timeline of like who did what was talked about. so it's easier to onboard people to new projects and collaborate that way. So I say, I mean, Bluebeam and Chat are great. Obviously, the calendar, everyone uses it, and we use it pretty pretty religiously just to make sure everyone's on the same page. And my calendar is usually pretty full, just not of work meetings, but if I have an ASC meeting, if I have something like that, or if I'm gonna be out for maybe a longer lunch than usual because I have a family dinner or something, all those things go in there. I truly just leave out my calendar. If it's not in there, it's not gonna happen. And I think that's especially more important now that I'm working remote. And the last tool is obviously a project management tool. We don't use anything too sophisticated. We have like a Google Sheet to just kind of plan that the project managers use to plan the week, and everyone's gonna look at it and just set the expectations for the week, which I think is very important as well.
I know we were chatting before we started recording, and you were kind of talking about using the tools that your company has available to you. And I would say for sure, like that's the first place you should start. Like those are the tools your company wants. So, like you said, you guys use Google. My company, we don't use Google, and so it would be a challenge for me if I were to just be the only one using it and just telling everybody else they have to follow my lead on that particular project or whatever. So definitely find out what tools your company is using, get, behind those and use them. But I also would recommend, if I have an employee who comes to me and says, "Hey, I like let's say we were working together and you said, I've been using Notion and I've been doing this tool. These are ways that we can customize it." It gives me an opportunity to at least review it and say yes or no. If I can find a way that we can quickly and cheaply integrate it into kind of the way that we work, I'd be down for that. But just definitely focus on the tools that your company is using first, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I will love our company to use Notion because I see a lot of
Sure.
potential. But again, that's not the tool we use for managing projects or keep documentation or do all of these things. So I have to adjust to what the company uses and making sure we all, like, if I have everything in Notion and nowhere else in the company folders or in shared documents or anything, it's gonna be useless because nobody else can see it, nobody else can collaborate with it, nobody else can use it for just keeping track of projects. So again, using the tool that the company has is important, and sometimes it may not be the best tool out there. Maybe you wish there was a different tool, but again, like you said, just bringing it up and making sure the company is aware of these other tools. And I think we as a company are growing, and we're still fairly small. We're on like 20 employees, so these tools are not really essential for us right now. We can still,
Mm.
we're small enough that we can collaborate using different tools, but we're starting to see that we're kind of hitting that ceiling where we may need something else in the future. And I think that those conversations are starting between leadership and obviously I like having a good tool that everyone can use and collaborate with and be informed on what's going on with the project.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Let's move on to just what it means to really collaborate, because I think we talked about kind of the tools. We talked about um, again, multiple teams in multiple maybe time zones or countries like you. But I think at the end of the day, being open to like the feedback of like, hey, you're not communicating with me in a way that it's beneficial to the team, or these are some of the things that you are not doing that could help us get there to our goal to finish the project, to do something with this project. if you're if you get that kind of feedback and people say, hey, your calendar is never up to date, like, what's up with that? And you say like, I don't care, I'm always just working, or you didn't answer my chat today, or it's been like a couple days since I sent you a chat and you haven't replied to me, like, what's up with that? And like, I was busy, I didn't check my chat. That's not gonna get anywhere. So what are some of the things you think about when you hear about like having that mindset of open communication or just being open to feedback?
Yeah, well, first off, you hit a huge nerve. Like, oh man, somebody not responding to a chat or an email within 24 hours, there is nothing worse than that. That if you're an employee of mine and you want to get under my skin, that is the first way for sure. So you totally just hit a nerve. Like I'm already cringing inside. Just that drives me crazy. Uh, so, uh, man, there's so many things to talk about here, but collaboration would not be needed if you could do everything by yourself. We we are a team. We are rarely ever working on our own, and you can't do everything by yourself. And so you need to get the team together. If you have a team member who is not open to feedback, who is not open to improving, who's not open to like, hey, what if you try this? And like a tips for just getting better team, collaboration. Well, then that collaboration, that team is gonna be as weak as that relationship, or as weak as that person. So it's huge. You got to be open to feedback and just seeing how can we improve. I tell my team all the time, like, I'm gonna say something that is either a correction to you or an improvement for you, but it's never in the, I'm standing above you and I'm shaking my finger at you like you did this or you need to do that. And it's never that way, and if I ever come across that way, please, call me out on it, because that's never my intent. I will need to share negative things with somebody eventually. That's just, I mean, nobody's perfect, but I try to show them like it's from a heart of betterment and improving and just getting everybody to be stronger together. So, yeah, I would definitely say you have to be open for feedback. You have to be open to improve, and it's all just for getting to the team to be better. It's in that spirit.
Yeah, and you kind of remind me of just a situation just like that kind of recently that happened to me. I had my annual review kind of the early in the year, and I've told everyone like I'm okay with feedback. I write you, tell me the things straight. Like don't sugarcoat it. Don't That's not gonna help me, and it's not gonna help anyone. And I feel like this is the first time where I've gotten like real feedback in terms of like, here are some of the things that you should improve. And this was more related to just kind of me uh, getting promoted, hopefully sometime in the near future. So like working towards that, but some real feedback. Here are some of the things that you should improve. Here's some of the things we're seeing. Here's where you're lacking. And I think that's the feedback that it's going to help me the most. The feedback that is, oh, everything is great, you're doing great, nothing really to change, just continue doing what you're doing, is not going to do anything for anyone. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard to hear it. Sometimes obviously we would like to think that we're doing great at work. We like to think that everything that we're doing is benefiting everyone, but at the same time, sometimes that's not the case. And sometimes the little things, even if you're doing great and you are a high performer and you're doing great at your job, your career, those little things could take you from just doing good, doing great, to just getting to the next level and really taking off in your career. So being open to that feedback, I think, is super super important. And I'm always just open to like honesty. And it hurts sometimes because you're proud of the things you're doing, but if you're not receiving that, you're probably not going to get to the next level.
Yeah. One other thing that came to mind when you were speaking is when you are trying to collaborate, where you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, or trying to maybe get around a design calculation that you did, whatever it might be prepared. Like, come to that meeting, come to that conversation prepared. You don't necessarily have to have a full on agenda, but you should at least have a bullet list of, hey, we have 30 minutes together. This is what I'm hoping to cover. I've been trying to do that better in this project I'm working on right now, and it's a lot of quick communications. We have an overall team and we have meetings every Wednesday, but then I get my, like, sub team or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call us, uh, together on Mondays just for like 30 minutes. And 30 minutes will go by really fast. And if you don't keep the conversation and the collaboration kind of on topic, you're going to lose that 30 minutes and you don't get anything out of that 30 minutes that you really need. So even in my 30-minute, hey team, we're going to meet, at 11 a.m., these are three things we're going to cover, and it's just bullet points. It's not fancy. I mean, it's not even formatted. It's just literally three bullet points. We're going to talk about schedule. We're going to talk about these updates in this language for the guideline and this. And if we have extra time and people want to chat longer about other things, we have an open discussion time. But like that was the purpose of that particular collaboration. And so making it efficient, making it productive is going to be really big. And it requires some extra effort on your part before you have that meeting.
Yeah, and I think like as engineers nowadays, we are extremely, extremely busy, and we have definitely just felt that at our office and people I'm talking with, we're really busy. I've been working overtime for the past like 3 weeks, which is it's hard, um, but at the same time, it's just the season we're in, and if you're not communicating, if you're not again making sure everyone is aware of how busy we are and you are efficient with your time. So when you have a meeting that is 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour and you're done within, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, but then you stay chatting for another 15, 20 minutes, maybe it's not the best use of the time right now. It's great to kind of catch up with colleagues. It's great to have that feeling of community or feeling of you belong to the company, but sometimes you just need to be aware of like the situation you're in and the space you're in. If you are coming to a meeting about a project and you know you're on a deadline, don't spend 20 minutes just chatting about what you're going to be doing over the weekend or something. Just make sure you have an agenda and make sure you are focused on what the goal is. So I think that's a great part of like the feedback and making sure everyone's on the same page. And obviously, meeting and setting expectations is a big part of that.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay, let's just do a quick recap, unless you have something else to discuss and on any of those points.
Actually, I just wanted to make sure I discussed quickly. Um, a lot of the times when you're collaborating, it may not just be the people in your department or your discipline. I know you are, very structural focused and very unique, projects that you're working on. For me, the projects that I work on involve a lot of different teams from a lot of different disciplines and departments, and so with all of that cross discipline discussions, if I don't know the lingo very well, it's going to make, that meeting less efficient when I have to ask them, well, what does this mean and what does that mean? So, when you're starting out, just start creating a list of, hey, I'm a roadway person and this structures person mentioned this and I keep hearing them say this. So I'm going to look up what that is, or I'm going to ask them what that means. So the faster you can catch on to the other disciplines lingo, the better that meeting and collaboration will be efficient. The other thing is learn the other person's style. This is more just kind of a improved communication in general.
Hmm.
But when you're collaborating and you are coming into this and you're like, how's your spouse and how's your dog and how was that vacation, and that person, their style, they don't really want to be doing that small talk. It's not important to them. It's not the way they communicate. uh it's not. I mean, they'll probably be nice. I would hope that they're going to be friendly, but it's just not the way that they would want to communicate. For me personally, I really love details. So if I'm asking somebody to research something for me, like I want to know like what did they look at, and because it just helps me, like it helps my understanding of it. But I also don't want to read this summary email or summary discussion and have to sift through all of the information just to figure out what they figured out. So for me, I love my team when they kind of give me the answer up front. This is what I found, this is the answer, and then below that you write as much as you want. You write a novel, I will read it. I just if I see that it was helpful and for my understanding of why it is the way it is, I love that. But other people, they don't want to see that either. They don't want to see this long email because then they feel like they're obligated to read it. So just learn somebody's style. That's just going to improve the collaboration in general, for sure.
Yeah, we could go on a rabbit hole here, but just the way you
Sure.
format emails could be a full episode, in my opinion. There's a lot that
Oh
goes
yeah.
into it. Just make sure you highlight some of the, and just go back to the communication aspect of the things. And maybe we should do one on just kind of those different types of communication later on. But yeah, there's definitely, and I've heard that from many people. Just the longer the email gets, and if you just have a block of text, it's not gonna get read. You're just gonna skim through it, and a lot of information is gonna get missed. So making sure you format that correctly, make sure you have bullet points, bolding important information and such. I think that's a great way to improve that aspect of it. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, we talked about, so the three things kind of we talked about: collaboration tools. I think that's using what your company has, making sure you are both aware of what's available to you and make sure you know how to use it. I think it's important. If there's an opportunity to have a better collaboration tool, I think that's a plus. But using what your company has is probably your first priority. Be open to feedback. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't want to hear it. Sometimes it hurts because you think you're doing great. But I think that's the way to improve. And if you are always getting positive feedback, that's great. But sometimes you need a nudge to kind of move to the next level. And I think the last one was just make sure you're checking in with your team. Make sure you learn the communication styles. Make sure you are setting expectations, especially for example, now that I'm working remote. Like, what are the deadlines? Do we have a deadline this week that we need to be working towards? Those communications often happen naturally when you're at the office. Someone kind of walks by and say, "Hey, how is your project going? Remember, we have to send this out this week." But now it has to be like a formal communication to know those deadlines. So make sure you're aware, make sure the expectations are met, and I think that's a great way to, as a employee that is remote, to stay up to date on everything. And I think I've started to use a lot more chat, these spaces on the company, just to make sure we have a document to keep track of the projects. So yeah, regular check-ins, open to feedback and tools. What else would you add to this kind of quick summary?
No, I would just kind of elaborate on the, what you need to know, the schedule, scope, budget, that sort of thing. If you don't get that up front, don't be scared to ask. Sometimes when I'm giving direction, I forget everything I need to be sharing with that particular person. So, I would appreciate if somebody asked me, "Hey, when is this due?" And trust me, that's probably the thing that I am the worst at, and my employees will immediately. I mean, they're so good at it now. They're just like, "Hey, you said to ask when this is due. When is it due?" So it's just, don't be afraid to ask. It's just gonna make it all better, and you're not gonna miss a deadline that way, which is the worst thing. So, yeah, just wanted to elaborate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope these tips were helpful for you listening at home, in your car, going to work. And obviously, this is just the beginning of what a collaboration of work really looks like. This is just touching the surface of some of the basic tips that can help you in your career. If you're a young engineer, what does the manager expect? If you're a manager like Nicolai, what do they expect from the engineer? What do they expect to in terms of checking in and to make sure you're collaborating with everyone? So let us know on social media, reach out on LinkedIn, or send us an email to make sure you are part of these conversations. We recently started doing a chat on Substack where this is being submitted and posted. So make sure you collaborate there. I think that's a great way to chat with us, making sure you are getting your questions answered. We'll continue touching some of these interesting topics. But as always, if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, just let us know. We're open to answering your questions and hopefully help you in your career, which is the number one goal of this podcast. So really hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you check Nicolai and I on LinkedIn. You can just search our names and that will pop up there. Make sure you follow the podcast over there as well. And I'll talk to you in the next one. If you really enjoyed this episode of the Engineering Future Podcast, you're going to love the content we have over our website at luisfelipeduque.com. You can find the link in the description of this episode as well as the show notes at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Every episode comes packed a lot of links, a lot of information. So you can find all the show notes and all the information related to this episode over at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Thank you so much for coming back to this episode. Thank you, Jack Winters, for the music. And as always, let's continue engineering our future.